Welcome to Daily Dose of Knowledge. Today we're stepping into the mind of one of the most calculated, disciplined, and psychologically complex human beings on the planet. The chess player, not just someone who knows the moves. Someone who has trained their mind to operate at a level most people never reach. And what's fascinating is this: the game is almost secondary. What happens inside the mind of a chess player is the real story. Today we go there. And by the end, you will see your own thinking differently. Let's start with something most people don't know. Chess is not primarily a game of intelligence. It is a game of pattern recognition. And the difference between those two things is enormous. A highly intelligent person who has never studied chess will lose to an average player who has studied for 2 years. Every time. Because the studied player isn't thinking harder. They are seeing faster. Their brain has stored thousands of patterns and retrieves them instantly. Psychologists call this chunking. The brain groups information into meaningful clusters rather than processing each piece individually. A beginner looks at a chessboard and sees 32 pieces. A grandmaster looks at the same board and sees 3 or 4 meaningful structures. They are not smarter. They have trained their perception to cut through noise and land directly on what matters. This is the first psychological shift chess creates. It rewires how a person sees complexity. And that rewiring doesn't stay on the board. It follows the player into every area of their life. The chess player at work doesn't see a chaotic situation. They see patterns, structures, familiar shapes wearing unfamiliar clothes. Now let's talk about calculation. Because this is where the chess mind becomes genuinely different. Every move in chess requires the player to look forward. Not just one move. Sometimes 10, 15, 20 moves ahead. This means holding multiple branching futures in your head simultaneously. Evaluating each one. Discarding most. Selecting the best. Psychologists call this tree of analysis. And the ability to navigate it without losing track is a trained mental skill, not a natural gift. What chess trains is working memory under pressure. The ability to hold complex information in your mind while new information keeps arriving. Most people's working memory collapses under pressure. The chess players has been deliberately stress tested thousands of times. This is why chess players tend to be unusually calm in high-pressure situations outside the game. The pressure is familiar. The mind has been there before. Now here's something that surprises people. The best chess players are not the ones who calculate the most. They are the ones who know when to stop calculating. At some point, more calculation produces diminishing returns. The position becomes too complex to calculate all the way to a clear answer. At that point, the grandmaster does something remarkable. They trust their intuition. But this is not the intuition of a guess. It is the intuition of 10,000 hours of stored pattern recognition firing all at once. Psychologists call this expert intuition. It feels like a gut feeling. It is actually compressed experience delivering a verdict faster than conscious thought can articulate. This is one of the most important psychological lessons chess teaches. Know when to think. Know when to trust. Most people do one or the other. They either overthink everything or act on impulse with no thought at all. The chess player learns to do both. At the right moments. In the right sequence. Now let's talk about the opponent. Because chess is not just a battle against the position. It is a battle against another mind. And this is where the psychology gets truly deep. Elite chess players study their opponents before they ever sit across from them. Not just their moves. Their tendencies. Their habits. Their psychological patterns. Does this player panic in time pressure? Do they become reckless when losing? Do they play differently in must-win situations? This is called psychological profiling. And the best players weaponize it ruthlessly. Bobby Fischer was a master of this. He didn't just try to beat his opponents on the board. He tried to destabilize them before the game even began, arriving late, making impossible demands, creating uncertainty, putting the opponent in a state of mental disturbance before a single piece was moved. Because Fischer understood something profound. A disturbed mind makes worse decisions, always. The game is won and lost as much in the psychology as in the moves. This is why emotional regulation is one of the most critical skills a chess player develops. You cannot afford to react emotionally to what happens on the board, not to a brilliant move by your opponent. not to a blunder you just made. Emotion clouds calculation. It narrows vision. It makes the mind reactive instead of analytical. The chess player trains themselves to observe their own emotional state the way a scientist observes an experiment, with detachment, with curiosity, without being swept away. This is a skill that takes years to develop. And it is arguably the most transferable skill chess produces. A person who can sit across from someone trying to destroy them mentally, feel the pressure fully, and still think clearly, that person is dangerous in any arena. Now let's talk about failure. Because no sport or game in the world confronts a person with failure as nakedly as chess. In team sports, you can blame your teammates. In games of chance, you can blame luck. In chess, there is nowhere to hide. When you lose, you lost. Your thinking was worse. Your decisions were weaker. The board doesn't lie. This creates a very specific psychological relationship with failure that chess players must develop or they will quit. The ones who survive and improve develop what psychologists call a growth orientation toward mistakes. After every loss, the serious chess player does something most people find genuinely painful. They sit down and analyze exactly where they went wrong. Move by move, decision by decision, not to punish themselves. To understand. They look their own errors directly in the face without flinching. They name them. They study them. They absorb the lesson. This practice, called post-game analysis, is one of the most psychologically demanding things a competitive human being can do. It requires the complete suspension of ego, the ability to say, my thinking here was wrong, completely wrong. And here is exactly how and why. Most people cannot do this in any area of their life. The chess player must do it after every single loss, sometimes multiple times a week. Over years, this builds something extraordinary. A relationship with one's own failures that is neither defensive nor destructive. Not, I failed, therefore I am a failure. And not, I didn't really fail, it was circumstances. But, I failed here, in this specific way for this specific reason, and now I understand something I didn't understand before. That is one of the rarest psychological orientations a human being can develop. And chess forces it. Now let's talk about time. Because chess under the clock is a completely different psychological experience from casual chess. When the clock is running, every second of thought has a cost. Spend too long on one move and you run out of time later when it matters more. This forces the player to make decisions under genuine scarcity, not just of information, of time itself. And here is what happens psychologically under time pressure. The quality of thinking changes. Patterns that were buried under layers of calculations suddenly surface. Decisions that would have taken 5 minutes get made in 30 seconds. This is not always worse. Sometimes the time pressure strips away overthinking, and the player finds a clarity they couldn't reach when they had all the time in the world. Chess players develop what psychologists call decision comfort under uncertainty. The ability to commit to a choice when you don't have complete information and the clock is running. This is one of the most valuable skills a human being can possess. Because life almost never gives you complete information. And it almost always has a clock running. Now let's talk about what separates the very best from the merely excellent. At the elite level, almost everyone has the same opening theory. The same endgame technique. The same tactical ability. What separates them is almost entirely psychological. Magnus Carlsen, widely considered the greatest chess player alive, is known for something specific. He keeps playing in positions that most grandmasters would draw. He finds complexity where others see simplicity. He creates problems where others accept peace. This is not just chess skill. This is a psychological stance toward competition. A refusal to accept the comfortable outcome when an uncomfortable one might yield more. And it unnerves opponents. Because they came prepared for a certain kind of game, and he gives them a different one. The psychological pressure of playing someone who is never satisfied, never settling, always looking for more, that is its own weapon. Now here's what all of this means for you. Even if you have never touched a chess piece in your life, the chess player's mind is not a special kind of mind that only some people are born with. It is a trained mind. Built through repetition, failure, analysis, and the willingness to sit with complexity without panicking. Every skill chess develops: pattern recognition, working memory, emotional regulation, decision-making under pressure, honest confrontation with failure. Every single one of these is trainable. Not on a chessboard necessarily, but through any discipline pursued with the same seriousness and the same commitment to honest self-examination. The question chess asks every player, every game, is the same question life asks every person, every day. Can you think clearly when the pressure is real? Can you see what is actually there instead of what you want to see? Can you make the best decision available with the information you have and the time you've been given? The chess player spends years learning to answer yes, not perfectly, but consistently. And that consistency, that trained ability to bring your best thinking to the hardest moments, is one of the most powerful things a human mind can develop. Subscribe to Daily Dose of Knowledge for daily videos on psychology, human behavior, history, self-help, and the forces that shape how we think and live. Drop a comment. Do you play chess? And if you do, has it changed the way you think outside the game? Watch the next video. Because we are just getting started on what the human mind is actually capable of.